The years of war had left indelible marks on Alaric's body. He was no longer just a soldier. He was a weary witness to countless battles, losses, and victories. In this period of decline for the human empire, Alaric's story was known even in the farthest corners of the galaxy. But today, Alaric was not on the battlefield. He was on a medical ship, lying in a hospital bed. His body had become almost half human, half machine. His right leg was replaced by a heavy metal prosthesis, and his left arm was entirely mechanical. Artificial life support systems controlled his circulation and organ function, embedded in his chest and back. However, his greatest wound was hidden from sight. In his soul, every clash, every loss, every injury had weighed him down further. The room was silent. Only the mechanical beeping of medical devices echoed. Standing beside him was a tall, slender alien doctor. Nandrel had his eyes fixed on Alaric's report. His white skin and delicate limbs reflected the precision required in medical work. Nandrel was an experienced doctor with an intimate knowledge of human biology, but there were many things about this man that felt too complex even for him. He lifted his head and looked at Alaric's still face. "It's impossible for him to return to battle," he whispered in his own language, his tone serious. The examinations conducted on the human had yielded results. His physical limits had long been surpassed. Before him stood Commander Zalathar, a robust and powerful figure with determination in his eyes. This alien, belonging to one of the allied races, knew well the brutal nature of war. He had witnessed Alaric's countless victories. He knew that Alaric could not give up fighting, but the doctor's words hinted at another reality. The human body could not withstand so many injuries. Nandrel took a deep breath and paused. His internal organs, blood flow, nervous system, everything is gradually failing. Sending him into battle under these conditions would be equivalent to abandoning him to death. Zalathar stood beside Alaric, tilting his head slightly as his long antennae twitched. He replied slowly but firmly, "Humans are not like the living beings, you know. The weakness of their bodies does not determine their will." He fixed his gaze on Alaric's closed eyelids. "He is still fighting." Just then, Alaric's eyes fluttered open. First, he noticed the dim light of the room, then the people around him. The weight, fatigue, and pain he felt in his body were as usual. He was aware of the medical devices that tethered him to the bed, but even those machines could not extinguish the fire within Alaric. Zalathar smiled when he saw Alaric was awake. "Captain Alaric," he said, his voice filled with respect. "War is waiting for you." Alaric took a deep breath and tried to get up. His body felt as if it were filled with lead, but he paid no mind to it. He stumbled for a moment but quickly regained his footing. His mind was sharper than ever, and his will was stronger. For several minutes, he stood silently in front of Zalathar. There was determination in his eyes. Nandrel watched this moment in silence, startled. "This is impossible," he muttered. He had thought Alaric had already surpassed his physical limits, but the man before him still appeared ready to fight. Zalathar's voice grew stern. "I told you," he said, looking at Nandrel, "they never give up." Alaric listened silently to what the doctor said. Everything in his body told him to stop, but the warrior spirit within him commanded him to continue. For him, the fight was not over yet, and he was about to enter his final battle. With one last effort, he straightened up, checking his mechanical limbs as he did so. He felt every muscle movement, every signal working correctly. He fixed his gaze on Zalathar. "War is waiting for me," he said in a low voice, but there was deep resolve in that voice. Zalathar nodded slightly. "It's impossible to stop you," he said. Alaric was once again ready to fight. Both the doctors and the allied commanders looked at him in astonishment, uncertain of how far he could go. Despite feeling the thud of his mechanical legs against the ground with every step, Alaric continued to advance. His mind knew that the battle was about to begin. His body had already sprung into action. As he approached the front lines, other soldiers parted respectfully for him. Everyone knew that the captain had returned. His mere return was a miracle in itself. The Threxians were among the most ruthless warriors in the galaxy. With their tough, lizard-like armor and sharply curved weapons, they had brought armies across the galaxy to their knees. The human empire's final gambit against this formidable foe was Alaric and his unit. Before the battle commenced, he gave his last orders to his squad. "There is no room for fear in this fight," Alaric said, his tone as firm as a wall. "This enemy will try to annihilate us. But remember, we humans do not give up." Alaric's words had motivated his unit. Even their alien warrior allies noticed how this courage affected them. Alaric's body might have been mechanical and weary, but his spirit was still ablaze with fire. When the battle began, the depths of space suddenly echoed with explosions. The Threxian warships glided through the darkness of the atmosphere like shadows. The human unit had set up a defensive line against the Threxian assaults. Alaric stood at the forefront. As the enemy approached, his breath quickened, and his heart beat a strong rhythm through his artificial veins. The first clash began with a massive laser attack from the Threxian armored units. A blue beam shot past Alaric's right arm and severely injured the soldier behind him. Yet Alaric advanced without hesitation. Increasing the speed of his legs, he charged into the enemy line. Although the Threxian warriors' massive armor slowed their movements, it enhanced their power. One Threxian soldier swung a heavy spear towards Alaric. Using his agility, Alaric skillfully dodged the spear. Countering the enemy's move, he delivered a powerful blow to the Threxian's chest with his mechanical arm. The strike was so forceful that it cracked the Threxian's armor. As the enemy fell, Alaric continued to push forward. He no longer cared about the limits of his body. His sole objective was to break through the enemy line. In the midst of the battle, Vex, one of the Threxian leaders, noticed Alaric. The alien warrior hurled a massive energy ball at him. The red energy sphere approached Alaric at lightning speed. Alaric activated his shield within seconds. However, when the energy ball struck the shield, a violent explosion erupted. The blast knocked him off his feet, and his mechanical legs trembled from the impact. Sensors in his body indicated that he had sustained damage. Although he felt a slight sting inside, he paid it no mind. When he rose from the debris, Vex stood before him. The fact that Alaric had survived such a powerful attack shocked the Threxian leader. Vex hesitated for a moment. However, Alaric did not forgive his enemy's uncertainty. He quickly got up and, using the strength of his mechanical leg, leaped towards Vex, driving his spear deep into the enemy's armored chest. Vex's eyes widened in astonishment. His armor had been pierced, and blood flowed from within it. Without pausing for even a moment, Alaric brought Vex down. As the enemy commander crumpled to the ground with screams, Alaric began to survey the enemies around him. In a moment of silence, the Threxians began to retreat. Alaric glanced briefly at his allies and then plunged back into the battlefield. Alaric's performance revitalized both the human unit and the allied aliens. He moved like a ghost among his enemies. Every move he made was lethal, every attack precise. He was fast enough to surprise his foes and strong enough to encourage his allies. He toppled enemies one by one. As the intensity of the battle increased, Alaric's body began to struggle further. His mechanical limbs started to tremble, and the systems inside him were overloaded. However, Alaric's mind bowed to none of this. He was showcasing humanity's deepest strength: willpower. Another explosion occurred, this time very close. Alaric fell to the ground, but he quickly got back up. His arms and legs trembled as if in rebellion, but the determination in his eyes never wavered. As the Threxians scattered around him, Alaric made one final leap forward. They had already won the battle, but for him, the meaning of victory was different. He had given everything to this fight. Even the allied aliens couldn't believe their eyes as they witnessed Alaric's performance. How could a human continue to fight so fiercely in such a wounded state? Alaric's body was on the brink of collapse, yet the warrior spirit inside him denied this reality. In the end, Alaric's unit emerged victorious. The Threxians had retreated, but the true miracle of the battle was that Alaric still stood. A group of Threxians charged at Alaric, each armed with massive and deadly weapons. Alaric showed not the slightest hint of fear against this encirclement. He activated the mechanical claw on his right hand. The energy field surrounding the claw vibrated, emitting a thin whistling sound in the air. One Threxian swung a colossal war hammer, but Alaric anticipated the move and rolled to the ground. A moment later, He pierced through the enemy's abdominal armor with his claw. Another Threxian drew an energy sword and lunged at Alaric. However, with perfect timing, Alaric evaded the attack, gripping the edge of the sword with his mechanical arm. His arm possessed far more strength than an ordinary human's, and he wrenched the sword from the enemy's hand and hurled it away. He delivered a sudden blow to the Threxian's face, knocking it to the ground. Meanwhile, explosions continued to reverberate around them. The heavy scent of burnt metal and organic matter filled the air. Alaric's eyes locked onto Cavor, the Threxian leader directing the battle. This massive Threxian was much larger and had thicker armor compared to the others. Cavor knew that he had to defeat Alaric, the leader of the humans, to end this war. Cavor raised his massive energy axe and advanced toward the battlefield. Alaric knew he had to gather his remaining energy. Despite feeling that his legs could endure no more, his will compelled him to move. With a surge of determination, he ran towards Cavor. When Cavor swung his axe, Alaric dove to the ground and quickly aimed for the enemy's legs. Alaric's mechanical leg struck Cavor's knee with a forceful blow, causing the enemy to lose balance and stumble backward. However, Cavor quickly regained his footing. At that moment, Alaric activated his shield with one last burst of energy. The shield absorbed Cavor's next massive axe swing, but Alaric's body was on the brink of collapse. The power of his shield was waning. Cavor raised his axe again, but Alaric, in a final act of defiance, drove his mechanical claw into Cavor's chest armor just in time. The energy field penetrated the enemy's armor, and Cavor's scream echoed across the battlefield. The Threxian leader fell to the ground in agony. Alaric climbed on top of the kneeling enemy and with one final surge of strength, he toppled him completely. Cavor's death sent shockwaves of panic through the Threxian army. With their leader defeated, they were forced to retreat. As Cavor's lifeless body lay on the battlefield, Alaric knew that victory had finally come to them. However, Alaric's body could endure no more. He sank to his knees. His left arm and legs trembled with alerts from his circuits. The mechanical systems inside him were beginning to fail, but he still felt the satisfaction of having won the battle. He turned his gaze toward the battlefield. The Threxians had completely retreated. Zalathar approached Alaric after the battle. As he looked at Alaric's injured and exhausted state, his eyes reflected respect and astonishment. Alaric took a painful breath and slowly smiled. "We humans," he said, his voice weak yet resolute, "never give up." Those were his last words. Alaric breathed his final breath on the battlefield, a symbol of humanity's resistance. But his story had transformed into a legend that would echo not just among the enemies he fought, but throughout the entire galaxy. Alaric's name resonated as a legend among the countless stars. This battle, proving that the limits of human will were boundless, became a lesson for all races in the galaxy. Even when their bodies faltered, humans would fight with their spirits forever. I hope you had a good time. If you liked my story, do not forget to comment and subscribe to my channel. Goodbye. See you in the next story.